All right. So let's take a look at some evidence. Just like we did with mental health, we looked at the message society culturally is spreading, and we took a look at the evidence. Let's do the same for obesity. This is a very global perspective, and it's data collected over a long period of time, but it is helpful, nevertheless, to show um, this trend. So you can see in the maroon are representative of women, okay, females, and the blue are men. And let's take a look at the square. That is going to be from women from developed countries. And you can see that obesity, the prevalence of obesity is highest among this group. Okay. And we can take a look at developing nations. So the triangle is women from developing nations, and although they are less than women from developed nations, it is still higher than their counterparts, men, in their same countries. So this image, this graph, does a good job of helping us see when we're comparing women data points to men data points what that difference is. And women are always outranking in prevalence, outranking men. Okay. So let's go ahead and think about, well, okay, so what? What's the deal with talking about mental health and then us looking at the obesity in isolation? Okay, so it's time for us to bring those together, and we want to be looking at the specific claim. The National Institutes of Health should fund studies examining the effectiveness of treating depression through the treatment of obesity for women. So I'm going to try and paint the picture of why we're making this claim, or I'm making this claim today. Okay. So, first of all, we've looked at a few sources and we've seen, okay, overall mental health statistics, specifically looking at women, they stand out there. And then obesity, women also standing out there. So now let's look at sources that integrated measurements for obesity and depression simultaneously. Okay, so when these are sources that we're looking at both of those factors. Okay, so for the first one, evidence shows that adults without depression were less likely to be obese than those who were depressed. And this data is coming from a U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and Centers for Disease Control data. This is data they compiled from 2009 through 2010. Okay. And so let's build on that. We also see from that same data source that women with depression were more likely to be obese than women without it. Okay. So this source is starting to show the connection between obesity and depression. Now, what exactly is that connection? We can't put our finger on it yet, but we're seeing that there is some correlation. Okay. And finally, it showed us that as women with depression, as their obesity worsened, the severity of their depression worsened regardless of their age. And that's really important to understand because when you look at obesity across age for women, it starts to dip after they're 60 years old. Obesity starts to go down, even in developed nations. But what this data point is showing us is if that person has depression, okay, then their situation is going to be different. It's going to be more complex. And their obesity might not take that automatic dip. Okay. We have an image here also that helps to illustrate this connection as well. We have BMI on the x axis and we have percent depressed on the y. And you can see that the lighter gray, those are the girls, they are represented here in higher numbers. So that further supports all the data points that we've looked at before, illustrating that women struggle with depression